Hi, this is Phil Nevin with the San Francisco Giants. You're listening to Out of Left Field with the Grilling Truth.
Hey guys, Graham and Chris back here with you again on Out of Left Field. My man, it is Pro Bowl Sunday.
Oh, well, whoop-de-doo. We get to watch a bunch of grown men stand around in pads and not play football.
well, hey, on the bright side, at least it's going to be, AFC versus the NFC, and I don't think we're going to have wide receivers playing defense, but, hey, it is what it is.
Have we figured out yet why they put the Pro Bowl in between the end of the championship weekend and Super Bowl weekend? Is it to force people to watch it, or is this some sort of sick joke that they don't want Pro Bowl quality players who might play in the Super Bowl to ever get any recognition in the Pro Bowl? Is that their deal?
Yeah, I was going to say I think it is kind of crappy when you could have the guys like Tom Brady and those guys down here. But hey, on the bright side, it is in O-Town. So I got to go over to see a couple of festivities, set in on Mike and Mike, had a chance to do a meet and greet with them. Thank you to ESPN 580 Orlando for the VIP passes to get in there. Really appreciate it. It was pretty cool. It's kind of neat to see the way that it works. And there were two people that showed up who apparently are in love with Mike Golick. And
he's lost. I haven't seen a picture of Mike Golick in a long time, and he has lost a lot of weight. He
has, but they brought him 4 dozen donuts from Donut King, and I think somebody brought some brownies. Yeah, and somebody bought some brownies. It was it was pretty fun. But man, even more important than that, because we know we're near the Super Bowl. Super Bowl's right around the corner, but we got 15 days for pitchers and catchers to report, my brother, and 63 days until the 2017 MLB season gets put in play. Please take your Giants hat off as we do the show. I'd appreciate it. I know that, my God, you wear Giants boxers and a Giants-colored cup, I wouldn't be surprised. But,
I don't wear boxers, sir.
Okay, that was more than the listeners wanted to know. And I understand that, the whole Halloween colors, orange and black, are kind of your thing. But let's put the ball in play on the show today. And I think we're going to go over to the blue and white to start off. We got breaking news coming into the show, reported just a couple of hours ago, January 29th, 2017. That is the day we're doing the show. Is this Sunday. So for those of you guys who catch us in a day or two and you're like, well, man, these guys are behind on the times. Hey, you know what? Listen sooner. How about that? But Brandon Moss, one of the bigger names left in free agency, has finally found a home, and he is going to Kansas City, where his mouth is going to water from the Kansas City barbecue hopefully for the Royals fans the next 2 years, as he will make $3 to $4 million next season with a very highly backloaded contract.
Yeah, this is a great pickup for the Kansas City Royals. They're going to add some home run threat. They already added a home run threat in Jorge Soler, and now they're going to have another guy just to complement that 3, 4, 5 slot rotation in their lineup. It's going to be really good for them, I think. Assuming he doesn't do what he did last September and go 084 for the month, then it'll probably be a good thing for the Royals. That is, by the way, what killed his extension talks with the Cardinals last year.
Yeah, and the thing that you have to hope for the Royals is they have a pretty nice middle of the lineup. Moose is going to come back, and Mike Moustakas at third. Eric Hosmer's still there. Salvi Perez is still there. And all these guys are probably nearing their end, unfortunately, in Kansas City. You're not going to be able to keep all these guys, unless they really just love playing together and are willing to take a pay cut, which I doubt is going to happen, while Haas is in kind of, his late 20s, kind of in the peak years of his career when he's in the money-making mentality. But Moss is going to be a nice piece. It kind of makes you worry a little bit about that bullpen that was so storied, and that's going to take us into our next story here in just a second. But he 28 homers and 464 plate appearances in 2016. It was 13th among major leaguers with at least 450 plate appearances. But you're right. He really fell off, and that's worrisome.
Especially since chances are he's going to be replacing Kendrys Morales at that designated hitter spot. That's probably where he's going to see the most action. And when his entire job is to come up to the plate and hit the ball, he really can't afford to slump like that. However, the power that he does have the potential for, and the ability to get on base that he does have the potential for, can almost give the Royals a little bit of a sigh of relief in that sort of gaping hole that Kendrys Morales left in their lineup.
Exactly. I mean, Morales was a big piece for the Blue Jays, although the question that I think is going to be how well does Encarnacion translate into Cleveland, because when all the talk is that he wanted to go back to Toronto, if Morales struggles and Encarnacion thrives, all the fans are going to wonder, well, why in the hell weren't you guys a little bit more patient to re-sign the guy who was really the face of our franchise? Moss last year ended up with an overall line of a 225 average and a 784 OPS, a 300 on base percentage. But after the All-Star break, I mean, his numbers kind of began to look like the Giants' second half of the season last year. I hate to be rude, but, I mean, he hit 191 after the All-Star break with a 248 on base and a 392 slugging, which, that's pretty rough. But when you think about it, he dropped over 60 points in batting average. He was hitting 256, close to a 900 OPS, actually over a 900 OPS, a 910 in the first half. So you got to hope that what he did in the first 3 months of last year, he can translate into a full season this year for the Royals.
And the Royals may be able to breathe a little bit of sigh of relief by filling that hole that Morales is going to leave. But unfortunately, their bullpen is going to pick up a little bit of a hole, since now Colorado has signed Greg Holland to a contract to be a closer for them, who, for those of you who might not know who Greg Holland is, you should probably dig a hole out from under the rock you're under, and try to remember 2014. He's the guy who picked up the Mariano Rivera Award for closers. He was out last year to Tommy John surgery. He's coming back this year. But even last year, he didn't do too badly. He still was able to pick up 32 saves in that season, where he ended up having Tommy John after the season. But we're talking about a guy who
actually he surgery happened, unfortunately, during the 15 season. So he actually was sitting at home in rehab during the World Series run.
Right.
Only got about 48 games in to 2015 before they had to pull him. And they asked Ned Yost. Apparently he suffered a minor UCL tear in 2014, didn't know it, and then it got so bad that it ended up being and the quote I believe I saw was a significant tear to the UCL ligament and required big-time surgery. So, I mean,
right.
Cautiously optimistic in Colorado, I think, is going to be an understatement here. But the reward is huge, and the risk isn't that big price-wise.
Well, I think when you look at a guy who got 48 games into the season and pulled off 32 saves in that time period, you're talking about a guy who, if he can even return to that level, is probably going to be a boon for you in the bullpen. If he can get back anywhere close to what he was in 2013, 2014, when he's out there making 47, 46 saves respectively, he's an all-star. He was even top 10.
Sub 1.5 ERA in both those years. I mean,
right.
I mean, in both his all-star seasons.
Even was a top 10 contender, came in number 9 on the Cy Young voting, and in the top 16 on the MVP voting with those two performances in 2013, 2014. So if we can see him return even close to that form, this is going to be something that helps the Rockies, because we all know that the Rockies' number one problem is pitching. And if you can't pitch and you can't close games, you can't win games.
Exactly. And the nice thing, I mean, it is a bullpen that is widely made up of veteran players. You have guys like Jason Mott in that bullpen who pitched with the Cubs and the Cardinals for a while, won a couple of rings. We've seen him decrease a little bit because his mechanics are very odd, I think is the best way to put it. He kind of almost double clutches as he begins his delivery. He kind of comes out, almost stops mid-motion and then double pumps the ball into the glove again before he delivers. But he's a hard thrower when he's got that command. I'm with you. I mean, Holland was like I said, you said it, gained notoriety. He was part of that three-headed snake for the Royals. Really kind of, as much as we looked at that team and that bullpen as being so, epic in what they did, it's also part of what we haven't liked in baseball in these guys being, these specialty pitchers. But it is, man, it's crucial. You're looking at a guy who, he's not getting paid a ton of money. So you're looking at, I think, $6 million this year, $1 million buyout, and then some vesting options depending on how much he plays. So in the grand scheme of what is the, a lack of salary cap and how much you're paying big players, it's really low risk for the most part for Colorado, with the possibility of a very, very high reward for the Rockies. And they've already gone out. They've signed Ian Desmond. Trevor Story's coming back healthy. You got Carlos Gonzalez. I think that if this pans out, and granted we still have to worry about what's going to happen with the Rockies in that starting pitching and that rotation. Starting pitching, as we said all of last year on the show, I think we're going to keep going this year on the show, is going to be a concern for a lot of teams. But if the bats stay hot and Holland was the right move, they're going to be buyers and not sellers at the 2017 trade deadline, and they're going to make a push for the wild card in the National League.
I agree. And, I hate to sound like I'm beating a dead horse or I'm bringing up something that's hard for some of our listeners to hear, but Holland represents another time this offseason that the Nationals have struck out in trying to find a guy. The Nationals were looking at Holland. They were extremely interested. They thought maybe this was the guy that's going to replace Mark Melancon, and then, bam, he goes to the Rockies. And the Nationals now are looking at a free agent market of closers that is small to non-existent.
Exactly. You look at probably the best free agents who are still, say, the top 5 or 6 that were still available. Brandon Moss was one of those guys. He's gone. Holland wasn't really on that list, but I think that's only mainly because you don't quite know what you're going to get. But everything that the Nationals have tried to go find has just slipped through their fingers. Matt Wieters is still there. We're not going to go into him again. But, man, you got to kind of hope as an organization that just the lack of being able, to find luck in free agency in the offseason doesn't kind of translate into almost a lethargic, dull beginning to spring training in the first month or two of the season for these guys.
No, I agree. And the problem is that having those kind of problems can do exactly that. It wears on the morale of guys. It wears on the morale of the front office. It makes it difficult to be ready for game day. But let's not forget that this is going to hurt the blue and white too. They're losing a strong closer in Greg Holland. And while this move hurts the blue and white as far as the Kansas City Royals are concerned, the blue and white as far as the Los Angeles Dodgers are concerned are celebrating. Not just the Dodgers themselves, but Dodgers fans are excited about this move that brings second baseman Logan Forsythe from the Tampa Bay Rays to back up Chase Utley in Los Angeles.
Well, there's actually a possibility here. Utley is on the free agent market. He's out there kind of right for the pick, and so it's looking like Forsythe is coming in really is kind of the owner of that starting second base job. Now, the big thing that you look at is what did LA have to give up? Now, we know that, without a doubt, at least in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure from what you and I have seen, we're with on this, but the Dodgers are picking up or have a ton of starting pitching prospects in their farm system. They're absolutely loaded. We saw it last year with Julio Urias. Also have a guy named Jose De Leon, or I should say had a guy named Jose De Leon. He was the one-for-one swap piece that the Dodgers send to Tampa Bay for Logan Forsythe. Now, Forsythe is more of a utility guy. He's primarily at second base, which is nice. The one thing that I'm surprised that I saw, and we'll get into this in a second, Chris, but Chase Utley is still being considered as a possible re-signing piece for the Dodgers. There's no guarantee he won't be back. It will be for sure as a reserve role now with the signing, or with the acquisition, I should say, of Forsythe. He's played over 110 games the past 3 years. So out of 6 seasons, the last 3 have really kind of been his most productive. Last year was his best season. His numbers are right about the same as Utley, but you're getting a guy who's 7 years younger. And at the same price, $7 million. He had his first 20-homer season last year. It's not going to be a huge upgrade. He's made about 42 career errors, in the infield, played first, second, and third. But you get an $8.5 million option next year. Here's what I think could happen. If you bring Utley back, I'm not saying it'll happen because I think the Rays might be wise to make a run at Utley themselves to have a veteran piece because you've lost a decent amount off of that team this year. Obviously, starting pitching is a big pickup for them, which we'll get into De Leon in a minute. But if the Dodgers can get Utley to re-sign as a reserve, then if you need to give Adrian Gonzalez, if you need to give Justin Turner a break, you have the ability to move Forsythe around, maybe here and there, while giving some of your better bats a break, and then inserting I think will certainly be in the Hall of Fame discussion after his career is over in Chase Utley, and putting him in at second base to kind of be a placeholder for a game or two while you rest some guys. Yeah, and the Dodgers made this announcement yesterday, and 29,000 people showed up to come to FanFest at Dodger Stadium yesterday, and that's where they made this sort of announcement that Logan was going to be coming to the Dodgers, and Logan was there. He took the stage, talked to some people, but that 28,967 is a bigger crowd than he saw ever at Tropicana Field. So the fans are excited. Logan's excited. The Dodgers are excited. I think this is going to be really good for them. I really hope that they bring Chase Utley back off free agency and that they can use Logan, as a piece to really fill out that infield and, have a young guy, a Corey Seager young kind of guy who can move around that infield, play those different positions, and help them out in. Go ahead. And let's not forget that Forsythe originally started with the Padres, so he's used to being on the West Coast. Certainly didn't have the production that he had during his time in Tampa Bay, where he really began to thrive. But let's also not forget that the Rays, they gave up Matt Moore last year. Chris Archer was rumored to be on the trade block the entire offseason. Probably is still going to be on the trade block come the trade deadline because, let's be honest, between the Orioles, the Red Sox, and the Blue Jays, and hell, even the Yankees, sorry, Dad, the Rays are unfortunately probably in line to be the worst team in the AL East at the end of 2017. So Odorizzi, Archer are probably going to go. You pick up De Leon. Kid's 23 years old. He's a top 30 prospect in minor league baseball. Tops out of his fastball about 92 miles per hour. You'd like to see him in the mid-90s. He has an injury history, not extensive, but the durability, I think, is the thing that most GMs and scouts are worried about. He only has 2 seasons in his career over 100 innings. And this guy's supposed to be a starter. So can you handle a major league workload? I think Tampa will start him out in the bullpen this year. I would be surprised to see him go down to the minors again. He finished off last season up in the big leagues with LA. I think you'll see him in the bullpen. Right now on the depth chart for MLB.com, he's listed as a number 6 starter. I wouldn't be surprised to see him start off in the pen and move into the lineup somewhere probably in the first 3 to 4 months of the season for the Tampa Bay Rays. Well, just as a sort of a light note on the end of this Logan Forsythe conversation, while Logan was at the Dodgers Fan Fest yesterday, he's on the stage, he's talking,
giving interviews, answering questions, and Justin Turner snuck up behind him, and he said, "Have you picked a spot in the locker room yet? Because I'm looking for a new neighbor." Logan Forsythe didn't even bat an eye. He didn't even breathe. He just looked and said, "Yeah, I'm your guy." So,
I want to say one thing before. Yeah, I mean, and he's a good locker room guy. Chris Archer was open on social media about his disappointment that he was losing Logan Forsythe. Absolutely loved the guy. So obviously, you're getting a guy who is a locker room guy. Guys want to be around him. Here's the one thing that I'm going to bring up, and this could be well premature. It could never even be a conversation. But the one guy the Dodgers try to make a move for, and it hasn't worked out, nor has it worked out for any team, is Brian Dozier. Now, Dozier is, a strong bat, veteran piece, and we know that the Dodgers have a very extensive farm system that is looking very, very good. If they had the ability to make a run into the postseason again this year, and Forsythe is hitting about the same, maybe even a little bit off this year in L.A., I would not be surprised, because he is still under contract next year with the $8.5 million option, to see them maybe dangle him plus some minor league guys to Minnesota for Brian Dozier if he is still there and a piece that they are willing to look at moving. It's something to think about. It may not happen. He may be a huge hit in L.A., and there may be no reason to even consider seeing him go. But when Dozier's out there and you were that hard up on wanting this guy, it could be a move that they make down the road this season.
Well, and to speak to that and to his presence in the locker room, it wasn't just Archer who was upset by the trade of Logan Forsythe, but Evan Longoria was a little upset, got on some social media and let his anger out a little bit on social media, saying that, he's really not happy seeing Logan Forsythe go. It was a shock to him. He didn't expect it to happen, that he's a great guy to have in the locker room. He's a great guy on the field. So I'm pretty excited. I'm not a Dodgers fan personally, but I'm excited to see how this whole dynamic is going to work down there and what he's going to be able to do. Just like I was excited to watch Corey Seager play down there last year. I mean, it's a lot of fun. So what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to discuss a blog post that was posted on the Grueling Truth Network, and we're going to go over it, see what you guys think, get some feedback hopefully from you guys, and we're going to do all that right after this.
Chris, it's Super Bowl week, which means the final game of the 2016-17 NFL season is upon us, and the long wait for the next kickoff is about to start. Are you already feeling withdrawal yet?
Yeah, I am, but you can't think that the Grueling Truth Network doesn't have you covered, because I see that My Good Pastor's already released his first mock draft of the year for next year and has everything that we need to know about what our favorite team needs and what new face is going to be making the highlights next season.
Exactly. Plus, on the Game Day IQ podcast, they're talking about whether or not Pac-Man Jones is going to be done in the NFL after all those comments he made. So football discussions aren't quite done yet.
Yeah, but hey, what the hell is going on in New York in the NBA? Phil Jackson and Carmelo Anthony are in a public feud. It's about to become one of the dirtiest things we've ever seen in sports in quite a while.
Makes me wonder if we're going to see another Latrell Sprewell situation, although I think Phil can probably take Melo. But I'll bet you they'll be discussing it on the NBA podcast. You can find all that and more at thegruelingtruth.net, The Grueling Truth on Facebook, and at Grueling Truth on Twitter. The Grueling Truth Network, where legends speak. Hey, guys, and we are back here on The Grueling Truth. On the second half of the show, a lot of stuff still to go. Like Chris said before we took a break, we've got the most improved teams so far this offseason. One of the guys that one of the teams we just discussed, not so much as improved as kind of holding par, would be the LA Dodgers, as they re-signed Kenley Jansen, Justin Turner, and then picked up Logan Forsythe in that trade acquisition. Plus, who are the 6 best or now 5 best free agents who are still available on the market? And we have Brian McCann and Mark DeRosa again stopping by to talk to us about the Houston Astros, who are one of those teams that you just might be hearing about, who have made some of the biggest splashes this offseason. But, Chris, first off, let's get into what you were saying with Mike Goodpaster, as he wrote a pretty brief article, but took a lot of stuff that we have talked about and put into really who are the most improved teams in Major League Baseball. And the first team would be those Houston Astros, who we just discussed. An absolutely, amazing amount of pieces that they've signed. They picked up guys like Carlos Beltran, Josh Reddick, Brian McCann. I actually had a chance to talk with Brian McCann out at the Diamond Resorts Invitational Golf Tournament a couple of weeks ago, and I want you to hear what he said and how excited he is to be putting on an Astros uniform this year.
Hey guys, here with Brian McCann, now of the Houston Astros. First thing I'm going to ask, just for some fun question, how's it feel to have the beard back?
It feels amazing. 3 years of looking in the mirror and not recognizing yourself. So yeah, I'm excited about having that back.
So, it started in Atlanta, had a great time in Atlanta, loved watching you there. Then you go to New York. What was the draw going to Houston? We've seen huge changes there coming into the 2017 season. They're, adding some big bats. You're going to be behind the plate calling balls and strikes for a really good pitching staff with Dallas Keuchel, Lance McCullers. Yep. What was your big draw there?
Just how talented they are. They're young, talented. The lineup is deep. The rotation's really good. The bullpen's really good. With speed and explosiveness, and it just a lot of things drew me. And I want to catch. I want to catch every day. I still want to do that for as long as I can.
And last thing I want to ask, the Texas Rangers had a pretty good hold on that division last year. Astros gave them a really good run in the middle of the season and kind of tapered off. What do you guys think that you need to do to go ahead and unseat the Rangers as AL West division champs?
Well, it's hard for me to answer because I wasn't there last year and I didn't get to see the games. So it's a whole new season. This is a whole new year, and maybe they got the better of them last year, but this year's a whole different story. So we just got to come out and play consistent baseball for 6 months, and then get into the playoffs and then make a run.
Appreciate it. Good luck. See you in October.
Thank you.
Well, see, I can't agree with what Brian said there more. And let's all be honest with ourselves that just like Mike says in his blog post, that if the Astros hadn't had such a terrible start to the season last season, it's really possible that we would have seen them in the playoffs. You made that prediction when we were picking our teams for the playoffs last season. That was kind of your out of the box pick. But let's be honest, if they hadn't gone 7-17 in the first 24 games of the season, they would have been right in there.
Exactly. And we know they have the bats. Carlos Correa started off hurt. He's coming back. Jose Altuve had what you and I both thought was going to be an AL MVP kind of season. I still think it probably should have been. Mike Trout, you're a great player, but your team had no chance at even competing to make it in the postseason. Altuve and the way he was coming back and holding that team, leading them forward, gave him a great possibility of making the playoffs. And yeah, it tapered off at the end, but man, when we hit the All-Star break, they were on a tear. Now, the other thing that we always talk about is what? Starting pitching, right? They have a guy who won a Cy Young in Dallas Keuchel. But another guy who you and I think is important is also a guy who MLB Network's own Mark DeRosa thinks is important. Have a listen to what he thinks about the Astros' chances to unseat the Rangers next year as AL West champions.
Now, your playing partner today, Brian McCann, just signed with the Houston Astros, and they have made a lot of moves coming into this 2017 season. Do you think the Houston Astros have what it takes to unseat the Texas Rangers as the AL West champions in 2017?
Absolutely. I think, they got to have a healthy Lance McCullers. He's got to make 30 to 35 starts. Dallas Keuchel, I think, will get back to somewhere in the middle of his Cy Young year, and last year fell off a little bit. So I think he's somewhere in the middle there. I'd like to see him get one more pitcher. I know they're trying hard with the Quintanas and the Archers of the world, but at the end of the day, their offense is stacked with the additions of Reddick and McCann. Like you said, Carlos Beltran. Bregman's got now a half year under his belt, so he's going to be ready to go. So I don't know if it's a wait till deadline and see where they're at, but they're definitely one of the more exciting teams going into the season.
And again, thank you, Mark DeRosa, for joining us. And I couldn't agree more. We had talked about that before, how important Lance McCullers was going to be to the Astros rotation. He's a guy that you need to have back up Dallas Keuchel. You need to have teams be scared of the guy with the beard and also scared of what comes down the line. Guys last year were going into Houston, seeing him on the schedule. Keuchel wasn't even a fear last year. Your hope at least this year is you see him, you get worried, and maybe now with McCullers, if he picks up his game, crap, now we got to face two of these guys in one series. Are we going to be able to pull a series victory out of this?
And let's not forget that while he might not be the biggest name that the Astros picked up, and he might not be the most dangerous bat in the lineup, the Astros did pick up Nori Aoki in this offseason. And Nori Aoki, in my opinion, is one of those guys who, while he might not be exactly an Ichiro Suzuki, he has that sort of ability to place the ball where he wants to place the ball, to get on base. I mean, we're talking about a guy who has a 350-plus on-base percentage his entire career. His career on-base percentage is 353, and he also hits 286 for his career. And that type of bat, that sort of Suzuki-ish type of bat, that Ichiro kind of bat in the lineup is important when you have guys like Altuve behind him who are going to knock him in. He is the RBI on base waiting for the big bat to come up.
Exactly. And, I mean, it's a piece that I think we're going to see the most improved team probably being the Astros. I think A.J. Hinch is going to have finally something around him that lends itself to them making I think that they have a chance. I think that they will win the AL West. I really do. I think that, yes, the Rangers added some pieces and they're still there. We'll see what the rotation does. But if you get Keuchel back to what he was doing and McCullers shows up, I think there is a really good chance at seeing the Astros winning that division.
Well, I completely agree. I don't think that anybody can say that with the moves that they've made this offseason in Beltran, Reddick, McCann, Aoki, Morton, those guys, nobody can look at those guys and say that that doesn't prepare them to win the West. But let's go ahead and move from one AL West team who we think might win to another AL West team who were trying to make a move at the end of last season in the Seattle Mariners. They didn't do a whole lot this offseason, but they did pick up Gene Segura. And Gene Segura, who was the National League hits champion last year.
The guy we talked about who left Arizona this past season in the trade. We discussed him last week. And, yeah, man, I mean, that was – I think you and I both are still kind of scratching our heads as to why the Diamondbacks were so eager and willing to let him pass without what seemed to be a lot of fight.
Right, and so what Mike has to say about the Mariners is spot on. They picked up Danny Valencia, who's a versatile sort of infielder, can play the outfield, and they upgraded their pitching staff with Chris Heston, who has been playing in San Francisco, who's a great bullpen guy in San Francisco. I really think he's going to do great up there. And then Carlos Ruiz.
He pitched a no-no for you, didn't he?
He did, as a matter of fact.
Actually, he's from Bayside High School, about 35 minutes just south of me, actually. One of the, I think, the first pro ball player out of that high school. And definitely had a hell of a first year or two in the bigs. And the one guy that we also have discussed was moved last year to L.A., much to the pained chagrin of Clayton Kershaw and others, was Carlos Ruiz. So a veteran catcher in there, you need that. We'll see what happens more with these pitchers, especially with King Felix clearly on the decline. But it's good to have a veteran guy back there calling a game for these young pitchers.
I have to wonder, now that we're talking about Carlos Ruiz and going to the Mariners, I have to wonder how that's going to affect the performance of Clayton Kershaw next season, if that's going to hurt him. And if having a guy like Carlos Ruiz could maybe help Felix Hernandez pitch better, or at least have a game called better for him, that he can then just worry about hitting his spots and throwing his pitches.
Well, when you're shutting a catcher who caught a perfect game and a no-hitter in the same year from the same guy in Roy Halladay and has had his share of damn good pitchers on a staff, you're definitely getting a good guy in there who understands the game. I think they're getting somebody that's going to understand how to manage a game for an aging pitcher who I don't know if Felix is totally ready to acknowledge that, yes, he is aging, that the way that he made his mark is no longer going to be doable. So you have a guy who's going to be able to kind of say, hey, I get where you're at. I know this is hard, but we have to make these adjustments in order to make you effective. Another team, as we move into the National League side, a team I asked Mark Mulder about, and we're going to get actually to that interview probably in another week or so when we discuss the Cardinals at length in the Central Division, as that is where we are headed after we touch on our final team in the NL West this show, is the St. Louis Cardinals, the perennial postseason contenders. I mean, a team that has been really, I mean, you look at kind of the San Antonio Spurs of Major League Baseball. And I say it with all deference and respect, but they do things the right way. They have an expectation, except when you have a guy who tries to hack into another team's, computer system. But that's neither here nor there. He's gone. And there is supposed to be a judgment on that coming soon. We'll report on that when it happens. But the Cardinals, while maybe they didn't make a ton of moves, they picked up Brett Cecil, who's in a bullpen that needed somebody, a guy who has a sub-3 ERA over the past 4 years and almost 11.5 strikeouts per 9. You needed someone to kind of round out that backside, because of all things, it has always been the Cardinals' staple, it's pitching. And the last year or so, that has begun to decline. Jaime Garcia has gone to Atlanta. Michael Wacha struggled. We'll see what Adam Wainwright does. But the biggest piece, we all know, is Dexter Fowler. They finally got a leadoff guy, someone they have not had, a great piece, a guy who loves playing the game, plays the game the right way, plays it hard. That is going to be, I think, the biggest shot in the arm for the Cardinals coming in to 2017.
Well,
now,
it's probably their best hope at chasing the Cubbies down too.
Exactly. Now,
Dexter Fowler,
you
former
mentioned,
Cubby.
Yeah, I mean, he knows how that team works. He knows. I mean, and obviously, I don't think he's going to bring too much that the Cardinals don't know. I mean, they play them so much because of the way the scheduling works now. But you mentioned the Cubbies and the team that faced them in the World Series, the Indians. Chris, I'm kind of scratching my head here, but it seemed to me that they made some kind of decent move this offseason that kind of puts them in a decent position for a repeat.
Yeah, who was that guy? Maybe the biggest free agent on the market at the beginning of this offseason in Edwin Encarnacion. I mean, not having Mike Napoli is going to be hard for them. But Encarnacion is a veteran guy. He's going to be able to come in there, and he's going to be able to take the leadership role over for where Napoli's going to leave a little bit of a hole in that lineup. And not to mention, he's going to bring a bat with pop.
A big bat. Yes, exactly. He's going to bring a stick that, he
might not bring
a lot of things away.
He might not bring a blinding on-base percentage or excellent plate discipline, but he's going to bring RBI and home runs into that stadium for the 2017 season, no doubt.
And the final team on the Grueling Truths number 5 list is going to be the Bo Sox, the Boston Red Sox in the AL East. Obviously they have the reigning Cy Young Award winner in Rick Porcello, who I still enjoy saying that we picked. We got a ton of grief from ESPN's own Adnan Virk on that pick, and he did admit that, hey, you know what, he didn't see it, but that we were right, and you can always find that show and plenty others, including our interview with Major League Baseball umpire Hunter Wendelstadt last week on the Out of Left Field Baseball community page on Facebook, as well as our social media pages at OO Left Field on Twitter and Out of Left Field hosted by Chris and Graham on Facebook. Now, Chris Sale is going to be the biggest acquisition, the biggest move, unless we see Quintana go, and that's still going to depend on where Quintana goes. Chris Sale is still going to be the biggest name. No question about it. And, you can ask anybody between, we talked to Mark Mulder, Dan Plesac. How about a former Red Sox player in Johnny Damon? I asked him, where he thinks the Red Sox are going to finish. I think you're going to appreciate his answer if you're a Red Sox fan. If you're a Yankees fan, just don't throw your phone and keep listening.
And before I let you go, just a little bit of baseball talk. Your Red Sox have made a huge splash picking up Chris Sale. Where do you think they're going to finish in the AL East this year?
Well, they better finish in first place. I mean, Chris Sale was one of those guys when I went to the ballpark, I was hoping I wasn't in the lineup. I mean, he's that nasty. And so they should be favored. If not, it's a disappointing year for them.
Johnny, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And thank you to Johnny Damon again for taking a couple of minutes with us. So, yeah, I mean, they better win. Anything short of the division is going to be a disappointment. Anything less than the ALCS and trip to the World Series is going to be a disappointment. That they are keyed up and ready to go, even with the retirement of David Ortiz. They pick up Mitch Moreland. That'll help a little bit. But, I think what you're going to see is you have the arm, you have the personnel. Where does the attitude go? What is the heart going to be like in Beantown?
Yeah, I agree. So, Graham, Mike ranked these teams based on who he thought did best in the offseason, and he ranked them thusly. Number 1 overall, the Houston Astros. Number 2, Boston Red Sox. 3, the Cleveland Indians. Number 4, the St. Louis Cardinals. And 5th, the Seattle Mariners. I want to go through and I want to re-rank these teams based on how you and I think that they did. While the Astros obviously won the offseason. I mean, if there was an award for offseason performance, the Astros won that. So we can leave them at number 1. But let's go through 2 through 5, and you tell me who you think should fill out those slots.
I'm pretty happy with the way that Mike ranked them. To me, Boston, I still think that Chris Sale was a big piece she needed. The White Sox got absolutely loaded with talent out of the Red Sox minor league system for that Chris Sale move. But to me, when you saw David Price struggle, and you have Rick Porcello, they avoided arbitration with Drew Pomeranz. To me, you needed a piece where I thought David Price was struggling being that number 1 guy in such a big market. I think Chris Sale going from Chicago to Boston makes sense. I like that. The Indians, I mean, my God, it's Edwin Encarnacion. I think if you want to juxtapose St. Louis and Cleveland, you can, because I think Dexter Fowler brings a more solidified expectation of what you're going to get. Encarnacion, we're going to see. I think he'll be just as good, if not better, because he has a better park to hit out of. That's just where I see. And we'll see what happens with Mike Napoli on the market. We're still waiting to see if he goes to Texas. Maybe Tampa makes run at him for some veteran leadership in that clubhouse. And the Mariners, man, they're 5th only because these are teams who made signings. If you ask me who should be number 5, it's probably going to either be L.A. or I would even actually take it back. L.A. was great in the re-signing of Jansen and the re-signing of Turner. But if you want me to pick a team who made a signing and it would put, it makes a mark, it would be the San Francisco Giants. Mark Melancon was a key piece for that team. They already have the same offensive production they had last year. Their bullpen is what failed. Dan Plesac even told us their bullpen is what let them down. I scratched the Mariners. I put the Giants 5th because Melancon, for the price you got him for, and the role and the way that the closer is still being used until that begins to change with the times and the way that managers might see the whole idea of a specialty pitcher, the Giants would have been my 5th team. Surprise to you, I'm sure.
I am a little surprised. I'm sure you're not surprised to hear me say that I completely agree that I think the San Francisco Giants should be in that number 5 slot. Although the Gene Segura trade is a huge, huge deal for the Seattle Mariners, it's not going to have nearly the impact that an excellent day in and day out closer is going to have to a contending team like the Giants.
Right, because Segura's a leadoff guy. Segura gets on base, but if no one can score him, 200 hits is great. 200 hits does not translate into runs across the plate.
Exactly. However, I completely agree with your assessment of swapping the Cleveland Indians and the St. Louis Cardinals. And the reason I say that is because I think that Dexter Fowler's ability to get on base and the people that he has in the lineup behind him and their ability to get him around those bases and across the plate is going to make a much greater impact than what Edwin Encarnacion is going to do by himself to impact the Cleveland Indians, who are already a great team. So Edwin Encarnacion's bat is a huge boon to them, especially with the loss of Mike Napoli. However, Dexter Fowler as a leadoff hitter is more of an impact to the performance of a team like the St. Louis Cardinals than Edwin Encarnacion's bat is to a team like the Cleveland Indians. So I think we swap. My list is Astros, Sox, Cardinals, Indians, Giants.
And I can't disagree. And I'm sure everyone's thinking, oh, we talked about this before. No, in the fairness and kind of a behind-the-scenes look, that question of the re-rank was a off-the-cuff idea you just had, and I didn't expect it. And I know that you sure as hell didn't expect me to say the Giants. But I mean, it is. All the pieces like with the Yankees and such is going to be mainly the people that they acquired off of trades and moves at the trade deadline this past year. To me,
and we can't pretend that Aroldis Chapman wasn't going to be going back to the Yankees the day he left.
Right.
We all knew it. We said it the minute he left that he was going back. So that's not.
He basically said it. So yeah, I mean, to me that is going to be really the piece that. It sounds crazy, but it really, I think, will be the move that gives the Giants the possibility to overtake the Dodgers again. Now, you mentioned Mike Napoli, and that takes us into, really, who are the best free agents still available? We are, as we started the show with, we're 2 weeks out from pitchers and catchers reporting, and that's usually means about 3 or so weeks out from, hey, everyone, it's go time. Get the Grapefruit League going. Get the Cactus League going. Umpires are in Phoenix, Arizona right now getting their physicals and getting prepped for this year. We've got 4 new guys in the umpiring ranks full-time this year, as we discussed last week with Hunter Wendelstadt. But, let's break it down, Chris. This is off of 12up.com, and I agree with their list here. And I'm going to go 1 through 6, and it's really 1 through 5 because one of them is already off the board, and that's going to be Brandon Moss. But from 6 down, got Joe Blanton, Chase Utley, Jason Hamill, Mike Napoli, and, of course, Matt Wieters, who we've discussed. And we're not going to get too deep into that. We know Wieters is out there. I'm still flabbergasted that he is not somewhere. I don't get it. It makes you wonder either what's he looking for or is he going to end up sitting on the couch when spring training? Honest to God, could you imagine the show in the second week of February and Matt Wieters does not have a home once spring training has begun?
No, I can't imagine that. Matt Wieters is way too good of a ball player to be sitting on his couch at the beginning of spring training. If Matt Wieters doesn't have a contract to play baseball in March, I don't know what's going to happen with the rest of this baseball season because that, to me, will be the most shocking thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I know we've touched on that so much. I don't want to keep on going and drive you guys crazy, but Napoli's a guy that we've discussed, and Nap has a lot of places I think he can go. He's been courted by a few big teams.
I want to add a name to this list, and I realize that this isn't a name that's on your list, but it's a name that I personally think should be, and that's Sergio Romo. Sergio Romo is the one-time closer, also committee closer for the San Francisco Giants, who actually won a World Series, closed out the final game of a World Series.
Most notably froze Miggy Cabrera to close the World Series out when your Giants swept the Tigers back in 2012.
So I want to look at Sergio Romo, and I just want to say really quickly that as much as the Nationals have struck out looking for a guy to replace Melancon, I think that Sergio Romo is a name that they need to put on their list. It's not an answer. It's definitely not a Mark Melancon equal answer. However, it's a guy that can come in and shut games when he has to. I think one of the problems that Romo had when he was on the Giants was that he was disenfranchised by the fact that despite freezing Miggy Cabrera in the 2012 World Series, despite being essential in the 2014 World Series, he was still relegated to the position of committee closer and ended up playing behind Santiago Casilla, who struggled mightily in the downfall at the end of last season, and
who already has a job, by the way.
Already has a job, and who continued to struggle mightily while Sergio Romo played still behind him. And I think that upset him, and I think that was really the cause of some of his problems.
Not a guy I would have picked. I don't think the Nationals have him probably very high on their board. If they need him, I'm sure they can make a move. I haven't watched Romo a ton. I know he struggled. I mean, his best pitch was a slider. Now, granted, the pitch he froze Miggy on was a fastball, but that was the only fastball in the ninth inning that he threw. It was on the inside part of the plate, and you see him back off, and it froze him as Brian O'Nora rung him up. So, certainly he has had his day. Would love to see him have it again. And that brings us to the only other pitcher on this list is Jason Hammel. Was a fifth starter last year. He's 34, went 15-10, a 3.83 ERA. Not great, but you could put him on the bottom of your rotation. And I'll tell you who I think if they're really adamant about trying to make the postseason, if you can get him to a decent veteran deal, maybe 1 or 2 years, 2 years with a third-year option, the Astros and the Rockies, two teams we discussed today, that could make a lot of sense. Two teams that need a little bit of extra help to kind of help push them through. The Astros especially, because I think they have more pieces to have a chance to make a run at the division more so than the Rockies do. Just because you have the Dodgers and the Giants there, it's going to be really, really hard when you got to play those teams so many times during the season to try and catch up. If you play them and lose, it's a whole game that you're going to lose to them. So I think it's a harder chance for the Rockies to make a consistent run. I think that Hammel could fit in Houston and Colorado very well, though.
I agree, and let's not pretend that Hammel is a guy that shouldn't be being talked about right now. Despite his 3.83 ERA last season, he still won 15 games. Started 30, won 15. He had a 15-10 record. His .600 winning percentage is something that should have earned him at least an interview by now. I haven't really heard much about teams being interested in him, but when you have so many teams who need starting pitching, who are in such dire need of starting pitching, who have all of these 3, 4, and 5 slots that are being taken up by guys who have a sub 500 winning percentage, and you have a guy like Jason Hammel sitting out there, I really think that some of these teams maybe need to step back and say, I realize he throws behind an Arrieta, but he still had a pretty darn good season.
Exactly, and that pretty much brings us to the end of this. The last two guys are two teammates from L.A., and that was Joe Blanton and Chase Utley. And there actually is some discussion that they may. This actually was on MLB.com. Austin Laymans wrote this, but there's still a possibility that Blanton and Utley could return to L.A. this offseason if they can work a deal out. And I think it would make sense. Blanton was a starter, won a ring in Philadelphia with the Phillies, was strong when he was there. He's not perfect by any means, but he was a solid long reliever in that LA bullpen. You can say, well, he gave up the big home run to, what was it, Wilson Contreras, I believe. Was it Contreras? I can't remember if it was Contreras or who hit it, but you're not really expecting it. But I think he is I think he would be a good piece for the Dodgers to hold on to. I think he gives them, a nice amount of depth in that bullpen. And then Chase Utley is a veteran piece. I mean, why would you not want to have this guy? Let's just be honest. Or it was Miguel Montero. So it was Miguel Montero who hit it, not Wilson Contreras. So, but yeah, I think both pieces make sense to go in there. I think Blanton would be a piece the Dodgers could re-sign easier because no one's looking for him. Utley's services are still going to be wanted. He's got maybe 2 or 3 good years left. So if they want him, get him. But I think there are going to be a couple of teams who need a veteran second baseman, or at least need someone to fill the hole, like the Rays, if they are that adamant of thinking they have a chance, that he would be, that he would be a fitting piece in Tampa.
Yeah, I will say this, though. I really think that Joe Blanton is a guy who could bolster the bullpen in Colorado. And having picked up a guy as a closer, I think that Blanton's a guy who could be a middle reliever for Colorado that's really going to bolster that bullpen for them. So I would like to see Colorado make a run at him as well as Los Angeles. So
exactly, I'm with you, and as I was looking up some of his numbers, and yeah, I mean nothing, again, like I said, nothing is fantastic, but nothing is god awful that makes you want to just get rid of the guy. I mean he's been around, he's up there in age, he's 35, but I mean come on, the kid went 7-2 last year, a 2.48 ERA and 80 innings. I mean, there's no way you can sit there and only remember him for giving up that home run.
And let's not forget, not only did he have a sub-3 ERA, he also had a 9 strikeouts per 9, less than 3 walks per 9. I mean, this is a guy, like I said, I think he could really bolster the Rockies. And on that same line, it's kind of time to talk about the Rockies, right? Because we didn't get to the Rockies over the last couple of weeks while we've been doing the National League West. So what do you think? I mean, I think Blanton's a good guy for the Rockies, and I think that this pickup that they made of Holland is a huge boon for the Rockies. What else do the Rockies need to contend next season?
Well, I'll tell you, I hadn't thought of Blanton going there. Say again?
Can they contend next season?
Well, they can contend. I think they can contend for a wild card spot, as I said earlier. I hadn't thought of Blanton going there, but I certainly see the possibility. Really, I mean, they need starting pitching. That's why I thought Jason Hamill could be a piece that fits there. Blanton he's farther up in age. He's been in the relief side of the game, I think, too long to effectively roll back into a starting role. But like I said, Trevor Story comes back healthy. You got DJ LeMahieu. You sign Ian Desmond, which is the biggest piece there. Carlos Gonzalez is still out there. You got Gerardo Parra, Charlie Blackmon. I mean, you look around this lineup when you hear Nolan Arenado, Trevor Story, DJ LeMahieu, Ian Desmond, Carlos Gonzalez, Charlie Blackmon. I mean, you hear that name, you're like, damn, they got pop. And we already know that the ball flies out of Colorado. Now, catcher-wise, I mean, we've already said Matt Wieters could go anywhere he wants. They have Tony Wolters. Kid's 24 years old. It was his first year last year. Not bad. Hit .259, a 723 OPS, drew 21 walks, struck out 53 times. So, about a 2-to-1 ratio, which isn't too shabby. But, I mean, 3 dingers in 71 games. He's not a great power guy. So, I thought that maybe you've already had some decent moves. Matt Wieters is out there. I mean, if he can put pop in the ball and he can get it, out of the fence, it brings you something. But to me, it still is a matter of starting pitching. Jared Weaver is out there. He's a lot older. I don't see when I hear Jared Weaver and I hear Jason Hamill, to me, just by their bodies of work, I think Jason Hamill is 3 years younger than Jared Weaver, and they're about the same age. So, and Weaver has been on the market. There hasn't been much talk. To me, Hamill would be a good piece for the Rockies to pick up. But on the grand scheme, when it comes to the lineup and the bats, man, I mean, they look solid. You shore up that bullpen. Holland shows you that he can do it. He's going to offset with Adam Ottavino, who is the current closer. But, I mean, the guy went 1-3 last year, a 2.67 ERA. He had 7 saves. I mean, it wasn't anything, epic. So you have a guy coming in now in Holland who, hey, you know what he can do. You've seen it before. He won't have the same pieces to lead up to his entrance into the game. But Jason Mott was no slouch, when he was with the Cardinals. And if you can kind of get back to that, keep something similar where, he had a loss last year and a near 5 ERA. You bring him back into the 11, the 12, the 2010 season where he was in the mid-2s, you've got yourself set up for a nice run down the stretch in the NL West, I think, for a chance at one of the wild card slots. There's just, between the Dodgers, the Giants, the Nationals, and the Mets, man, you're going to have a hard time getting into the playoffs, though.
Well, another thing that I'd like to see the Colorado Rockies do is I'd like to see them at least make an attempt to go out and re-sign Boone Logan, who is a reliever for the Colorado Rockies. He had a little bit of a rough season, although last season for him was a massive improvement over the previous 2 seasons. He had a 3.69 ERA, and his strikeouts per 9, however, were 11 strikeouts per 9. And his strikeout to walk ratio at 2.85. So he walks more people than Blanton does, but he's still a decent middle reliever who helped them last season, I think, a little bit, and with some good starting pitching can come back, I think, and help them this season. His only issue, I think, is that he tends to give up a lot of hits. He has about 6 hits per 9 innings. For a reliever, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I hate just giving you that one word answer, but it is. I mean, there are a lot of possibilities for this Rockies team to be ready to go, man. I mean, they really have put they've put the ball in their bullpen, for lack of a better term, because the ball in the court just doesn't quite have the same ring as it will for baseball, but they have set themselves up to be a team that, the NL West should look at and be concerned. They came back last year. They actually made a hell of a run at the tail end of the year last year. I think surprised everyone. But, you look at what the standings ended up being as far back as they were for the majority of the season. All of a sudden, they kind of turned around and were making a tear. And then, the story goes down, which was, and that was kind of the worst part of the whole deal. You're like, man, they had a chance. But at the end of it, they finished 75 and 87. I mean, dude, you're 7 games, or hell, you're 6 games just from being able to make it, to a 500 season, which was, I don't think any of us expected that coming from them. You look at even where did they finish in the wild card, and they finished 4th behind of all teams, the Pirates. They lost 2, or they finished out 2-8, which ended up hurting them going down the stretch. But I mean, they were 3 games behind Pittsburgh for the wild card, and they beat out the Brewers, the Phillies, the Diamondbacks, the Braves, the Reds, and the Padres. We know the National League wasn't that good last year. The AL was where it was at. The biggest team was going to be the Cubs, and they won. But teams better watch out for the Rockies. There is no question about it. They better be careful.
I agree. I'd like to see a big bat go there, in addition to some good pitching, maybe even a Mike Napoli. I don't know that Colorado is really the landing spot for Mike Napoli, but I think that Mike Napoli is going to want to be in the American League where he can DH. But if he doesn't have a job by the beginning of spring training and he wants to sit on the bench and come in as a pinch hitter, he's a bat with pop. And there's nothing saying that he can't still play for space.
Right. And it brings in a guy with a veteran voice. I still think he's looking at this late in his career. If he's going to play, I think he's looking to play for a ring. And I think that's why the Rangers have been the most likely landing spot for him. I think he should change his mind and go to the Astros. I don't think so. At this point, though, is there much of a place for him? I mean, they brought so many. There really isn't. I mean, even as DH, you have Evan Gattis now, who's going to DH because McCann, who we talked to, is going to catch. I mean, to me, yeah, I think the Rangers make a lot of sense. But you bring up the Rockies, and the Rockies, like we said, as we get ready to close out here, they have put themselves in a position to make their team a really desirable landing spot if you're a veteran guy who still has something left to give and is looking for a new home. So, guys, Chris, man, a great show. Absolutely loved it. Hope you guys are having a great year. Again, we're 2 weeks from pitchers and catchers reporting about, 2.5 months or so away from first pitch. So a lot of stuff to come. Next week we get into the AL Central. We get close to finishing up our breakdowns of all the teams in Major League Baseball, which means you're going to soon be getting our picks for the division and going into the postseason. It's going to be early, but hey, we always have that little feather in the cap of being able to change it right near the trading deadline. A lot of stuff, guys. We're looking forward to having a couple new interviews coming, including hopefully the creators of the Axe Bat, something that if you haven't seen, you are going to begin to see very, very soon. Mookie Betts is a guy who uses it. Looking forward to talking with them. Plenty more to come. Don't forget to check us out at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham on Facebook and YouTube, and like the Out of Left Field baseball community page on Facebook. For Chris, I'm Graham. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We will catch you again next week on Out of Left Field.